we have Waycross Media here today to film this. I just wanted to make sure they were prepared. I want to thank you all for coming. It's a nice day here at Forest Park, and we are very appreciative that we have a nice turnout. We'd also like to thank Congressman Chabot for giving us this opportunity for our citizens to talk and express their views and interact as much as we can. We will ask, hopefully, that we remain civil. This is a good time to talk back and forth and get some questions answered and also express your views. Hope everybody is prepared for that, and I hope everybody gets what they want out of this. City of Forest Park is moving forward, and we are doing well summer, and hopefully everyone else is doing well here. But we do have some economic development initiatives on the burner here. We're working hard on the mall, trying to figure that thing out and get it back into service and make it an economic engine for the city. Right now, I'd just like to introduce Congressman Chabot. Okay.
Their great facility here in Forest Park this afternoon. My name's Steve Chabot. I'm your congressman. I kind of hate turning my back to you all,
right.
but I apologize. And if you all want to ask a question too, you're welcome to do it. Just throw something at me, and But again, I appreciate you all coming out. We do these in all the neighborhoods throughout our district, and we of course are in the 1st congressional district. I think it's the best of the congressional districts in Ohio. There are 16 in Ohio. Our district is most of Hamilton County, including most of the city of Cincinnati, all of Forest Park, all of Warren County, about 730,000 or so people. We have an office here in Hamilton County. We're down in Cincinnati in the Crew Tower up on the 30th floor. That's your office, so you're welcome to come anytime. And if you want to meet with me or meet with my staff, or if you have an issue, whatever it might be. If there's just something you want to talk about, an overall issue, or if you have a specific concern, maybe you're having a problem with the IRS or veterans benefits or Social Security or Medicare, Medicaid, whatever it might be, our office is here to serve. And we've got some of our folks here today. Roz is in the back over there. Roz, you want to stand up? This is Roz. Roz is in the office that I just mentioned. This is Randy. Randy's also here in the Cincinnati office. And then Dan is one of our interns back here. And Joe is back there too, outside back there. And our other office is up in Warren County. It's in Lebanon, a couple doors down the street from the Golden Lamb. If you had the opportunity to eat there, we're just down the street on the 3rd floor. And then we have an office in Washington. We're in the Rayburn building. There are 3 house office buildings. Longworth, which is actually named after Nicholas Longworth, who is from Cincinnati, which is kind of cool. So we have a Speaker of the House from Cincinnati. And then we have a Speaker pretty close by, John Boehner, who is up in Butler County, just north of here. So we have 2 pretty close. And then another one is the Longworth building, and then there's the Rayburn building, and our office is in the Rayburn building. So you're welcome to come by anytime. We have family in there yesterday. We had school groups, church groups. If you want to come up anytime, our office we'll give you a personal tour of the Capitol building. If it's a school group, oftentimes I'll do that myself if I'm up there and available and do it. We can usually get you in the White House. We can get you in the Library of Congress and Smithsonian, all that kind of stuff. So anytime you might want to do that, let us know. Or if you want to tell me what you think about an issue, you can go online. It's Chabot, my last name, .house for House of Representatives, .gov, G-O-V. So Chabot.house.gov. And you can get all kinds of services. You can tell me what you think about something on there. We'll try to get a response back to you in a timely manner as well. Or you can call us at any one of the offices. So there's all kinds. We're on Twitter and Facebook and all that kind of stuff as well. So we do town meetings on the phone. We also do them in person. Today we're doing it obviously in person. And I'm not going to drone on and on here for a long, long time because this is your town hall meeting. I want to spend most of my time just answering whatever questions that you would like me to take, or if you don't have a question, you just want to tell me will you think about something and like me to respond, whatever it might be. If you have an issue that you need more personal attention with, you're fighting with the IRS about something, for example, but you prefer not to talk about all the details in front of a group here, my staff can stick around and go over that with you afterwards if you like. And I actually have another town hall meeting up in Warren County after this one, so after this meeting I'll be heading up there. We keep these to an hour, so we don't want to take a whole lot of your time. It's nice and cool in here right now. It's really hot. I saw 93 when I was driving past Kroger's down there coming here, so I know it's pretty darn hot out there today. So at least for the next hour we can be cool in here together. So anyway, that's all I really wanted to say up front, and I'll, let's keep it this, as the city manager mentioned, we keep it civil, and I'll be civil, and we'll, just raise your hand when you got a question, and I'll try to do the best of my ability. So let's just open it up for anybody that wants to talk about whatever you want to talk about. It's all yours. Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm Hugh McCullough. I've lived here in Forest Park since '66. The city manager mentioned some economic development and mentioned the shopping center that we've got up here. I've seen recently where Amazon has taken two old shopping centers up in the northern part of Ohio and converted them to fulfillment centers or similar. Has anybody looked at Cincinnati Mall, perchance, as an Amazon fulfillment center, and maybe we can utilize that property, which is quite large? Could we get some help from your office, or has anybody even talked about Amazon maybe being interested?
Sounds like a great idea. I know when they were talking about opening up their two really large national facilities, and then one was going to be in New York and the other in the outskirts of Washington. The New York thing ultimately fell through because the people decided, or at least some people decided that, we don't want it here, and Amazon basically decided, well, if you don't want us, we're not coming. There's plenty of people that do want us around the country. But as far as Forest Park, maybe I should ask the manager or the mayor if they want to. I think it sounds like it'd be a great idea because, as we all know, Forest Fair, I was on Cincinnati City Council, I think when that was somewhere between 85 and 90 when I was there. My recollection is that was around when it was built, and it's obviously always been kind of underutilized, and they tried various things over the years, and it hasn't gone as well as we would hope. But let's maybe hear from you.
We have, first of all, you need to understand that that's private property. It's owned by a private individual. We have and continue to have conversations with him about what he's going to do with that mall. He is now he's probably into his third or fourth marketing firm to market that for him. There have been a number of people who've expressed some interest in it for a number of other things. The one thing that is not going to work there, obvious, is retail. We've looked at it. There have been companies and businesses that have looked at it in terms of mixed use. But the bottom line is, at the end of the day, the owner of the property will dictate what happens with that. We have worked with the county, working with redevelopment groups here, as well as the Port Authority. We would like nothing better than to have that used for some other purpose, but he's shown no inclination of being in any hurry to do anything much with it. Obviously, we would be more than delighted if the congressman or the county commissioners or senators or governor or anybody could nudge him into taking some action. But as of over the years, he's chosen to do basically nothing.
You brought it up. I think it's a great idea. So we're taking notes here, and so we'll follow up and contact some folks, and obviously work with your elected officials here. I don't want to do anything, get cross purposes, anything they may have in mind, but yeah.
I thought for a chance that Amazon has enough financial backing to convince the owner to maybe look that way.
Yeah. I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Well, a follow-up
Yes,
question to that is he caught up in all this property taxes? And when does the government step in and say, well, you promised to employ this many people and pay this much taxes, but nothing has happened in at least 10 years? When does the government step in?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you all again want to
Well,
touch
it's
on
state and
that.
federal.
property
Yeah.
taxes, and it's current with all its assessments, so, it is on our radar. I really, honestly, I had a conversation last week, and I had a conversation the week before, specifically with developers on that property. We're having a conversation on Monday as well, with some of our attorneys to try and nudge this thing forward as best we can. But again, it's private ownership. You know, one of the things that we had, in setting up this meeting, we sent a letter to some talking points to Congressman Chabot. And one of the things that we would like to have further discussion on would be how the federal government can help us out, because these types of developments, and you can take any mall that's failing or failed, anything, you know, strip center to 1.6 million square feet, to get them redeveloped will probably take some action of the city or the government to help out in some way, shape, or form. Many times that is money to just tear the thing down. That's a lot of money, but a lot of times you have to start with a green field and a blank slate, because the numbers just won't work sometimes. But we are doing whatever we can, and we will continue to do. That is our number one priority, is to get not only that developed, but there's 2 or 3 other strategic places across the street here that we need, that we're going to need help on. And maybe it's some federal money, maybe some state.
Yes, I'm Ed Stanek. I'm on the Economic Development Commission as the chairperson. And the city manager has an excellent economic development department head, and Paul Brown. And he reports to us monthly, bi-monthly, as to what's going on with the mall. One of the questions, and I think the city manager answered it, they are current on their bonds and their taxes, so, and it is private, but if you would see me after the meeting, give me your name, I'd like to find out what those properties are up there and ask Paul if there's some way that we can, you know, pursue that. Thank you, sir.
And there are things, we passed legislation relative to tax law, as you probably know, a little over a year ago, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and there was things in there that did affect economic development and the ability for businesses to pay taxes, you know, later on various things, and it can actually make some projects go forward. It had a lot to do with our individual taxes as well. About 82% of Americans had their taxes reduced. There's some information out there that only the 1% got their taxes reduced, and they did, but virtually everybody else did too. So, but there are things in there that we could look at also that maybe could have some impact on this. So our office is certainly, I think these are very good ideas. I'm glad they came up. So we're happy to work at the federal level with you on that. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Teresa Rodriguez.
Hi.
My family moved here in 1968. I'm back in our family's house. I've been the president of the Women's Club here, and I'm on the Environmental Commission. My daughter, his mother, wanted me to ask what Congress is considering on helping people, parents, and daycare. She has, and how you're going to get people that are on assistance, encourage them to get back in the workforce, but they're struggling paying daycare. My daughter pays right now over $1,400. He's home alone at age 12 because she can't afford to send him to any day camps or daycares. She's gotten off. She finally got her degree at Miami. But I mean, $1,400 a month for daycare for just 2 kids. That's 4 times her mortgage. How can people get off assistance if they can't afford to get their kids in? It's just this circle. She fought to get off of the assistance. She has over $40,000 in student loans now. I mean, there's got to be something done to assist parents so that if they are on assistance, it gives them the encouragement to go out and get a job instead of staying on assistance.
Yeah, it's one of the greatest challenges that particularly single-parents face right now because
She's
childcare
married.
is so expensive. And in various tax reform bills over recent years, there were some improvements made that gave people more ability to actually be able to afford it, but that hasn't solved the problem yet, clearly. And one of the things we have to do, there are certain thresholds right now where we have people on public assistance. They might be on, say they have Section 8 housing, maybe they have food stamps, and maybe, have various assistance that they're receiving, but they will lose some of that if they get into the workforce when they start earning.
Exactly.
And so what we need to do is find a way to encourage people, because we want people to be as self-independent as they can be and able to rely upon themselves, but they need help. And this is one area and one of the most expensive areas, and unfortunately it's gotten more
Worse.
expensive.
Yeah.
Now, some of it has to do with regulations and how we regulate the groups that have to, where the health care occurs. And some of the state legislation and federal legislation to some degree has got it excessively cumbersome, so it becomes very expensive to provide health care. So that's another area that
No, it's not healthcare, it's,
not healthcare, but childcare.
Yes.
And so what we have to do is find kind of that sweet spot where we have the protection that the kids need. We don't want them to go to some place, leave our kids somewhere where ultimately there aren't enough people that are watching them and get too many kids there, and they're not getting the supervision that they need. And it's a mixture of both federal and state involvement, and we're working on it all the time. The various committees meet, talk about this stuff. Where we're ultimately going to end up, it's hard to say. And I'm open to suggestions as well, because this
Well,
is
one
the
thing-
information I get, I take back,
yeah.
and then
One,
we will
one
not.
thing that I think would help parents, but not until their kids turn 5, is full-day kindergarten.
Mhm.
That would save at least half a day of childcare.
Yeah.
And I know when I was working graveyard shift and my daughter was young, I put her in a private full-day kindergarten
Yeah.
so that I didn't have to pay that. And it's hard to get a kid to and from just 2.5 hours of school.
Yeah.
How do you get them to that?
Yeah.
It's logistically really hard. And there's data showing that kids that go to full-day kindergarten have a greater degree of graduating from high school.
Yeah, and that's one of the alternatives being considered. Now, most of that is under state regulation, the state school boards, et cetera, not the federal government. We do have a federal Department of Education, and it has some involvement, but it's principally about, even though the federal government is involved a lot in the time that local folks involve themselves in trying to get federal money, about 94 to 96% of the money that's spent on education is local dollars. It's from various local levies, it's from the state school board, et cetera. And one of the things that they've considered over the years, obviously it would alleviate some of the cost of the child supervision during that period of time, but it also costs more because you've got to have more teachers there for more of the day and that kind of thing. So it's a kind of a complicated problem. We're not there in solving it at all yet, but I appreciate you bringing it to my attention, and we'll continue working on it. Thank you for bringing it up. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Loretta Allen, and I was just curious, is Congress or the state looking at any provision for, I would say, seniors or anyone over the age of 60 that has student loans, that has paid faithfully over the years, with any kind of consideration once you actually retire?
I mean, if you still have a
And
loan
I
at that
still
point?
have student loans that I'm
Yes.
paying, but I did send a letter to my carrier requesting consideration because I did work in healthcare, which is one of the public service
Right.
industries.
Yeah.
There was no consideration of that. I did send a letter recently to my carrier explaining my reasons for retiring early, and they still would not do or give me any kind of consideration. They give you the standard verbiage, and I'm sure you know all that
Sure,
verbiage, but it's
sure.
very frustrating because I've done everything that I can.
Yeah.
And now I am on a fixed income, so I do understand how our seniors are struggling. But it's just very frustrating to know that there's no consideration of that at all.
Yeah. Are there things being considered? Yes. There were thousands and thousands of bills that get introduced, every year on a whole range of issues, including this one. Now, the chance of it actually becoming law, that's another story as to whether we all can get there. I mean, on a related topic, as you're probably aware, there are proposals to basically do away with all student debt, not just for seniors, but for everybody else. Now, if you have a large debt, let's say you owe 60 grand or something, you got this in front of me and somebody's gonna wipe that out, that might sound pretty good. However, somebody's paying for that. Well, who pays for it? As taxpayers, we all do, okay? It's easy to say stuff is free or to forgive debt, et cetera, but forgive debt, basically, somebody's paying for it. And again, it's everybody else. And is that fair to the people that for 10 or 15 or 20 years, paid on an ongoing, paid it down and paid off their debt, and then all of a sudden we eliminate everybody else's? So it's something as a community, as a society, that we have to decide. And ultimately, it's Congress that will make that decision. So you're bringing it up to the right person, but I just wanted to kind of tell you that there are implications to it as well.
Can the federal government cancel an individual's debt?
Well, if you look at this legislation, a lot of it is government, at this point, it's government debt, because the government has gotten so involved in the student loan program, especially in the previous administration. They basically took over most of the student loan programs. It used to be the banks that did this, and it was more competition. Now the government has acquired a lot of that debt, and they're paying a lot of it to us. So the government could forgive a significant amount of that. However, again, we have a $22 trillion debt hanging over all our heads right now. Everybody in here that pays, we all do. If you pay taxes, you're paying on that. And I like to compare that debt, which is kind of hard to, $22 trillion. What does that mean? Here's kind of the way I think of it. It's like if you have your house, let's say you're here in Forest Park, you live down the street, every month you pay your mortgage payment, and it's a 20-year or 25, 30 or more, you've been paying this off. Well, our national debt, that $22 trillion, is like you've got another house on some other street, let's say it's here in Forest Park, and you're paying a second mortgage on that other house over there, but you're not living in that house. But every month you've got less to spend on your own family because you're paying on this other house. And that's our tax dollars that we pay out of our paychecks to the federal government every week or monthly or however you're paid. Or less money that you, even if you're in Social Security, because nowadays Social Security is, on a lot of people, is also taxed. So that's what that national debt is, and it's getting bigger because we're spending more each year than we're taking in. So anything that we spend, or when anybody tells you it's free, I had a college professor in economics when I was in college, had a book he assigned to us. It was called "There Ain't No Such Thing as a Free Lunch," was the name of it. And it was by Milton Friedman, if you've heard of him. He's a famous economist. He's passed away now. But and the point of the book was basically nothing's free. We're all paying for this somehow. Yes, ma'am.
Well, if we're that concerned about these trillions of dollars in debt, was it that wise to do that type of a tax cut at that time?
Well, that's a good question, and that gets brought up. I think it's a legitimate question. And much of the tax cut, in my view, will be paid for by the economy, which has expanded. More people working, more taxes being paid in. Does it pay for it dollar for dollar? No, I don't think it does. So it did add somewhat to the debt. But I think over time, I think a pretty significant amount of that will be paid for. And what is the benefit by having our unemployment rates, for example, as low as they are right now? We're at 3.5%
But you still have a living
4%.
wage. She just told you she has 2 working parents there. They can't afford childcare, so to have a job and you can't afford the necessities.
2 jobs.
Yeah.
2 jobs. That's why the unemployment is so low, because everybody has 2 or 3 jobs.
Well, I don't think everybody has. Some people do.
A lot of people.
I'm not saying a lot of people don't, but yeah, some people
I
do.
didn't have
some
children
people-
out of wedlock. I went to work. I stayed out of trouble.
Well,
It's
you're
pretty
lucky
simple
you were born
formula.
in another era. The kids coming up nowadays, they're working 2 jobs, and with 2 of those jobs, they can't make it on what they want to charge for childcare, on what they want to charge for groceries, on what they want to charge for all of the amenities that, when we were coming up, we were in a much better place as far as finances. It is just, and I do understand, we can all say, you know, well, we're doing this, but these kids have it rough. We didn't have to, when we were coming up, half-day childcare and this kind of money that they're paying was unheard of. And if we're honest, we'll admit that. They've got it
There's
rough.
no question that it can be tough coming up, and we as parents, you know, to some degree, I think have a responsibility to try to educate our kids, to try to tell them and let them understand that decisions that we make have consequences, and so we want them to be responsible and know that they need to be responsible for the actions that they take. But if they make mistakes, kids do make mistakes, we want to come in and help them, and the government's there to try to help too.
We're not talking about people that make mistakes, though. I mean, the minimum wage is so low that it doesn't even pay for an apartment to rent.
They have to get 2 jobs.
And so what's your point then about, what do you, as far as the minimum wage doesn't pay for an apartment? And I think
Once they
that's
pay for the
problematic.
apartment, there's nothing left to pay for food or pay for
Utilities.
utilities, pay for childcare, so they have to get out. So these parents are going out and working 2 or 3 jobs. They don't even see their kids.
We definitely want everybody to have an opportunity and to benefit and to be able to take care of their children themselves. I think that's absolutely correct. And there's a discussion, a debate on you know, raising the minimum wage and should it be $15? Should it be, where should it be? You know, it's something we need to basically come to some agreement on that. I personally think, rather than have the federal government determine what all wages ought to be, I think that should be a state issue, and states should make that determination if they choose to do so. For example, in rural Mississippi, it's a very different standard of living than it is, say, in New York City. So to have the same minimum wage at both those places, to me, and the federal government said it, and that's the way it works, I'd much rather see the states making those kind of decisions myself. But I'm not, you know, I'm not from the state, I'm from the federal
Right,
government.
but unfortunately, states that are low, they'll continue to keep their residents in that depressed state of payment. And if there's not federal regulating it, there's going to be so many abuses of that law.
Well, I mean, I would agree that there needs to be federal involvement in some areas. You know, civil rights, especially, you know, during the 60s, but even today, there's a reason for us to have federal involvement in there. But I just personally think when it comes to economic issues, like the minimum wage, I would much rather see the states make that determination rather than Washington. But that's just my philosophy. A lot of people disagree with that, but I'm just, you know. Other questions or comments or areas that you'd like to cover? Yes, sir.
Name's Garrett Heiss.
Hi, Gary.
Voted for you every time.
Thank you.
I'm not sure why. Do you fight anything? I hear you
So
on the
fight anything
radio.
or find
I
anything?
hear you on the radio, and you're fighting against the other side, and the other side's fighting against you, but really, I think, isn't that just to win votes? Like, I'm gonna fight for you, and then when I get in there, I kind of really don't do anything.
Is that a question about me in particular? Well,
We
my
look at-
view is.
Look at Social
Yeah,
Security.
Sure.
Okay, it's going broke, but there always seems to be plenty of money for welfare and HUD, which is over $1 trillion a year, right? What about the people that earn Social Security? The people that, some of the people didn't do anything and they get a lot. A lot of people work their whole lives and now they're threatened with running out of money. Minimum wage, are we gonna raise that for the seniors on Social Security too? $15 an hour, are they gonna get that? They have the same bills.
That's one good thing about having immigrants here. They pay into our Social Security and help the Social Security
Right.
keep continuing.
Over half of the working population pays no federal tax. Over half.
Well, you know, all those big shots up there with their loopholes, why don't we talk about them paying their regular
Fair
taxes?
share.
Amazon pays, why don't they just, Amazon pays zero zilch? Why don't we just talk about not unfair or this or one group against another? Why don't everybody pay their fair share of taxes, including those guys that you gave all those tax breaks to?
Yep. All right, well, let me comment on the two things. So the one thing about, you know, do you guys do anything, whether it's me in particular, or just people that get elected. One of the main things that I had talked about was the fact that our spending is out of control, and that at some point, we're gonna have to pay the piper, we as taxpayers. And there's a group called Citizens Against Government Waste that keeps track of our voting records. I've always been in the top, sometimes, some years I'm the very top, but always in the top 5 in voting against what Citizens Against Government Waste consider to be wasteful spending. And that's out of 435 members of Congress. So I look at the money that we spend up there very carefully. For example, as far as the, you know, people paying their fair share. I mean, I agree with you. People should pay their fair share. Businesses should as well. As far as there are some corporations that find ways. I think one year it was GE that was the one that hadn't paid any taxes despite bringing in billions of dollars. And typically when we hear those stories, what has happened is they've had some kind of disastrous situation like in previous years, and they can write it off in years down. If you look at older years, generally they're paying a fair amount of taxes. But there's no question to me that there are some people that have found a way to scam the system. And that's one reason why I'm a supporter of something called a flat tax, or even a national sales tax. I think either one of those would be preferable to what we have right now. And let me just explain briefly what those two things are. A flat tax would be, we basically pay, you wouldn't pay on you know, medicines and certain things like that, but basically there'd be a 10% tax or a 5% tax or, you know, 22% tax or whatever, and we would pay that, and everybody would know what their tax is going to be, and we'd all have skin in the game. And if people made a whole lot of money, they, you know, 10% of that is a whole lot. And it's real simple. We wouldn't have to pay nearly as much for accountants or attorneys or tax preparers, because everybody can figure out what 10% is. You know, now we don't have that. Some countries do. Then the other would be a national sales tax. We get rid of the IRS and get rid of income taxes altogether. And when you go buy things, that's where you pay your tax. You'd not pay any, you wouldn't have to pay the IRS or anything else, but you'd pay a sales tax. I think that would be a simpler and fairer system as well. That's when you wouldn't necessarily pay on food, you wouldn't necessarily pay on some of the staples. It would be other things that you pay that on. But we're not near either one of those. When I first got elected, they were seriously talked about. There were radio ads being talked about the national sales tax. And I would have supported either one. We didn't get the votes to get those things. But what we did do in the last Congress, you know, we passed something called the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And I already mentioned this, so I don't want to get into too much detail here, but about somewhere between 82 and 85% of the American people are paying less taxes because of this. The average family in Cincinnati, it was about $2,400 less a year that we're all. So that's real money. That's the average. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody in this room, you know, got that. Some got less, some got more, depending on income. But a lot of people, you know, there was talk when April 15th comes around, there was a lot of news stories saying people are mad because they're not getting as much money back in their returns. You know, when they filed their taxes and they're waiting for, you know, $1,000, $500, $2,000 to come back, they weren't getting as much. People are saying, hey, they cut our taxes. Why aren't I getting that back? That's because they take out every week or every 2 weeks or month, however you get paid. They were taking less out because of that. And so people were taking it more home, but it didn't feel the same as getting a big check back. But a lot of people were mad about that. The bottom line is, most people paid less because of that. And that has helped the economy. It's helped us to have the lowest unemployment rate right now among African Americans, among Asian Americans, among Hispanic Americans. the unemployment rate is lower now than it's ever been in history. Now, does that mean that some people don't have 2 jobs? No, I mean, some people do. Some people even 3, as you all mentioned. Yes, ma'am?
I'm not so sure about all of that, but you're talking about this tax.
Well, I am sure about all that, but
You
that's
didn't get all
okay.
this money back. That's kind of elementary, but I'm speaking of the corporations that they said they were going to put back into the economy. They're sitting on that money. So it wasn't.
Yeah, some are, but when we passed this, shortly after this, we went out, for example, to a Kroger facility. It was either in Sharonville or Springdale. Do you remember where Springdale? They had a facility up there, and I actually brought the Speaker of the House. It was Paul Ryan at the time, because we had passed the bill, and it already kicked in, and what Kroger did. So it's a local company. It's one of the largest employers.
I know, that was overnight,
Yeah,
in the middle of the night, I passed the bill.
and they did a number of things with the money. They gave the people they gave the people a pay raise. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was a pretty good pay raise. They paid into their education account, so if Kroger folks want to improve themselves, so go to education, it was more for that to go move up in the company or somewhere else. And they put a portion of it in their pensions, so that they had more sitting there for them and waiting for them when they retire. Because we shouldn't, some people do, depend completely on Social Security when we retire. But if you can, if you're able to, obviously, if you can save some other way, or if your company has a pension, that's good, and that's what Kroger did. So that's what Kroger did. Now, did every company do that? No. Some people were greedy and took it all for themselves. But with unemployment being as low as it is right now, people have more options, and people are looking for different places and who has benefits and where can I do better. Not everybody has that opportunity, but the more skills they have and stuff, the better. I don't know if you want to follow up there, but
No, I just was on the thought of his question. I don't know if you fully answered that question about what you do. Is that where you were going with what they do in Washington, what he's done?
yeah.
What committees are you on?
I just meant, what committees am I on? I'm on the Judiciary Committee, I'm on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and I'm the lead, it's the ranking member on the Small Business Committee. I was the chairman for the last 2 Congresses, and the party control switched, and so I'm the ranking member on the
Being on the
Small Business Committee.
Judiciary Committee,
Mhm.
what is your opinion of how the White House is stopping all of the people from testifying in front of you and getting documents to you?
Well, they do have, to some degree, there's executive privilege, which presidents, both Republicans and Democrats, have a right to do. Relative to as far as I assume you're talking about the Russian collusion, Mueller investigation and all that. I was very careful being on that committee. A lot of our people were outspoken, or I'm a Republican, I don't want to get political and vote this way or that way, but I think people know that. And so the Republicans, a lot of them came out where, Trump didn't do anything, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of the Democrats were, he needs to be impeached, okay? I reserved my judgment until the Mueller report came out. I said, look, I'll weigh in at that time, I'll reserve my judgment until that came in. And it came in, and the Mueller report determined no Russian collusion. They didn't take a view one way or the other on obstruction of justice stuff, but the Attorney General then came in and said, in his opinion, there was insufficient evidence to move forward on that, to determine one way or the other.
So did you read the 400, you read the 400-page
I
report
did, yes.
yourself?
It took me 2 days, but yes, I read the whole thing. And in fact, yesterday, I went down to the Department of Justice, the FBI, those folks. And they had the 2 special rooms that I went into. One that had the unclassified backup materials to that, and then the other that had some classified stuff. And I'm not allowed to go into what the stuff said, but I went down here yesterday. Yeah, I think it's my responsibility as a member of Congress, especially as a member of the Judiciary Committee, to actually read all of this stuff and not just spout off about it. So I went down and read all that stuff, and again, I can't talk it, nothing that I read really changed my mind, but yeah, I'm very careful about doing that. But at this point, and again, this is my opinion, it doesn't need to be your opinion. My opinion at this point is now that report we spent, $22 million in how many months and all this kind of stuff, that I think at this point that to go on and on for months, I think my opinion is that we're wasting a lot of time and taxpayer money. I'd much rather see us work on infrastructure, for example. actually getting the darn Brent Spence Bridge done finally, for example. The Western
They
North
can't
Line,
because
for
of the
example.
land that they want to put it on is,
On which thing? The Brent
the
Spence?
EPA is still cleaning it up.
You talking about the Brent Spence Bridge? Yeah, it's there, and we got $53 million for it over the years, and part of it was the environmental impact studies that they do and the engineering reports and all that. The principal holdup on the Brent Spence Bridge is that we were able to get something in the last transportation bill. It wasn't just me, it was other members of Congress in the area as well, but I pushed it principally on something called projects of national and regional significance. So there's not a pot, there's a pot. It's billions of dollars for things like the Brent Spence Bridge. Now, is it going to pay for the entire thing? No. But in order to get that, it'll pay for a significant amount. To get that money, the local portion has to be decided by the local folks, which is principally Ohio and Kentucky. They have to decide how they're going to pay for the local portion, and that's what's been the holdup at this point.
Well, the Duke Energy plant is part of the holdup too, because that is.
Could you speak up, please?
I can't hear anybody.
The EPA is trying to clean up where the Duke building right next to the bridge is. So that's a lot of what's holding it up too. My daughter has worked on that project. She's not currently, not with her company anymore. But that is the big holdup.
There are a
It's
number of...
trying to make sure that all of the pollutants.
Yeah, there are a number of aspects, all that have to be dealt with. The principal thing at this point is how do we pay for it? That's the main thing. I think the other things can be resolved. And so I hope, and the Western Hills Viaduct is another one. Frank Bailey's on the west side of town.
Yeah.
That's another big deal that needs to be taken care of. So, and
No,
yes, let's go to the mayor here. Yes, yes, sir.
Couple of things that would benefit Forest Park and all of the citizens of Forest Park, in addition to your using your influence in projects like the mall. I know that every once in a while, consider housing some facility in Forest Park. That would give us, give our people an opportunity for jobs. It would help us in many, many ways. These, a lot of things that have been talked about are things that the federal government can't do anything about because it's state bound. But that would be one of the things that, as our congressperson, you might be able to steer in our direction, because
Sometimes, we need to know what it is that's being considered and what the community thought about it. If it's a postal facility, if it's, something like that, an IRS facility, and as you probably know, they closed the facility over in Kentucky. If it's something like that, I'm sure you'd want it. If it was a federal prison, you probably wouldn't want it. So, or a landfill of some sort, you don't want that kind of stuff usually. But we'd be happy to work with you, and, we definitely be happy.
Another thing that I remember, I think it was probably back in maybe 2006 or 2008 when we had the recession. There were a number of foreclosures. Those are still going on, but not as many. But one of the problems in the offshoots of those foreclosures was that there are a lot of large companies out there now whose sole business is to buy foreclosed single family dwellings. Those are no longer available to those individuals who want to buy that dwelling as a starter home, or they want to actually live in the community. So these companies that are buying these single family homes are buying them solely for the purpose of using them as rental properties. That creates a number of problems for us municipalities, and Forest Park being no different. One, absentee owners do not maintain their properties. They don't maintain the inside or the outside of the properties, causing us, the municipalities, to have to use our resources to do what they're supposed to be doing. One of the things that I believe that Congress does have the authority to do is to look at the regulations and say to the banks or the mortgage companies or whoever, you need to make these properties, these homes available for purchase to the municipalities first, before you go selling them to large conglomerates and you know what they're gonna do to them. Secondly, it's very, very costly and very difficult for us to chase down these violators when they violate our codes in terms of maintenance, because, you know, for us to send one of our police officers to Montana to serve a citation is going to cost us more than the fine, so they ignore them. Granted, we can place liens on the property, but that's not going to do us any good until that person decides they want to sell it 10 years later. I believe that if you would take a look at what impact, beyond the fact that the property got foreclosed, has on, you know, the local people and the local citizens and the local government, that would help us tremendously. And finally, the third thing that I would ask you to look at would be in terms of the new tax law. And this is a personal thing for me, not more than anything else. I know that when, you know, the tax laws was redone, one of the things that was said was that you would have more spending money because of the saving that you would do, because you will earn more. Well, unfortunately, and I can just speak for me, a lot of us are retired and senior citizens. We're not going to get pay raises. So when some of the things that I used to could use as a deduction for taxes are no longer going to be available to me, even the housing now, I think after this year, that's no longer going to be available to me as a deduction. For those of us who, as I think this gentleman alluded to, who've worked 25, 30, 35 years to get to retirement, and now that we're on those fixed incomes, those deductions, even though some of them were small, that we once could at least count on those to help to mitigate what our final tax bills were going to be, are no longer available to us. I'm not sure when this was being planned and put together that us old people were considered in that mix in terms of what the impact it was going to have on those people who were no longer working, and we're losing on both ends, because we're losing because we aren't working anymore, but we're also losing because those deductions that we were once allowed to have, we're no longer allowed to have anymore. They're being phased out, and I think the phase out, like for how the interest on the housing is like in the next couple of years, you won't even be able to use that. That's a big, big hit for somebody who's on a fixed income.
I think you raised some very good points. On the housing issue, I think you're exactly right. We don't want to encourage more absentee landlord ownership, and that's something. We mentioned before what committees I'm on, the Judiciary Committee, and I've been working on that for years on the bankruptcy bill, which actually has some impact on this, on the economic meltdown and how we handle that. So it's a big problem for communities all over our area and all over the country, and we need to continue to improve on that. Relative to senior citizens, as far as any of the deductions relative to home interest going away or adversely impacting folks, my understanding is that's on investment properties and only above certain amounts. So I don't think that that people should be affected by your interest deduction phasing out. I'll check that to make sure. We're also looking at a tax cut 2.0 kind of thing to go back and improve on any of the things where this tax cut bill missed the mark or needs to be improved. So we're looking at that now, and the information that I hear from folks here is what I'll do as one of the two top people on the Small Business Committee. We work with the Ways and Means Committee. That's the tax writing committee. And so we're telling them what we are hearing back here and how we can improve the next round. Now, to get anything done, you got to have a bipartisan agreement. You know, we've got a Democratic-controlled House and a Republican-controlled Senate, and they have to work together in order for this to happen. That doesn't happen a whole lot in Washington, unfortunately. I actually operate, and unfortunately is right, I actually operate in that manner because whenever I offer a bill, I almost always, once in a while I can't find one, but I usually get a Democratic co-sponsor to the bill and then push it together. That's why we get a lot more things passed. There's 2 colleges that did a study, UVA, University of Virginia, and Vanderbilt. And the last number of Congresses, they've been rating all of us on how effective we are. They determine your effectiveness by how many bills you're able to get passed and how important they are and that kind of thing. And in the last 2 Congresses, the last 2 times they've done that, out of 200 Republicans, I've been in the top 10 each time. I was number 7 and number 9 the last 2 Congresses out of 200. Now you might wonder, well, what about the Democrats? Why don't you count the Democrats in that? Whenever you're in the majority, you have a better chance of getting things done. So as a Republican, when I was in the majority, they're only going to count you versus Republicans. And now that Republicans are in the minority, they're not going to count you versus the Democrats, who have a better chance to pass things because they're in the majority. So anyway, that's I didn't want to get overly involved in that. But the bottom line is, to get anything done, you got to work together. And some of us are committed to doing that. And maybe it's one reason I was on Cincinnati City Council years ago, and you have Republicans and Democrats on there, and we were actually very bipartisan. We had a coalition of both that worked together and kind of led the city when I was on that. And I wish Congress did more together like that. But yes, Mr. Mayor.
The congressman has a few more minutes, so we'll ask him if he could take maybe a couple of more questions. And I know he's got to go because he's got another one right after this. And I think
we got about
people
6
told him.
minutes. So
Right.
yes, sir. I don't think we. Yes.
Ed Stadnick again. I'm an independent. I voted for Tom Lucan, Charlie Lucan, and Ken Blackwell. They're opposite parties. But I vote for the man, and I try to get to know the people. I have a special needs daughter, and someone asked, what have you done for me? I personally been involved with Mr. Chabot's office 3 times because of my special needs daughter. One was we had a very difficult time with DDS, Department of Developmental Services in the county. We had a very big issue. So I went to Mr. Chabot's office downtown, and I talked to him about it. And he said, unfortunately, that's not a federal issue, that's a county issue. I recommend you go see the county commissioners. So I went to see Mr. Fortune. And I didn't get a lot of help from him, but because I went to see him and I brought the issue to the county, things happened for the better. It was because more of a fear by DDS that I went to a representative and I told him I was going to go to the Senate, even though it's not a federal issue. But he did point me in the right direction. Years later, 3 years ago this month, I had an issue with an employer who, regarding my special needs daughter, they were egregious to her. They treated her improperly. They fired her without just cause. She was ill, she had kidney stones, and they said, you're taking off too much time. And I said, well, she's been in the hospital, she's got kidney stones, she'll be back as soon as she gets better. They said, we have to take a request for a leave of absence. I said, well, send me it and I'll send it back. Well, the next day, I didn't get a request for a leave of absence. I got a letter saying, Beverly, you've been reprimanded for missing too much work. Please sign this, ascertaining that you were reprimanded. I also got a termination letter. Now, I would think that most people sitting here would understand that's not proper. So I just went to Mr. Chabot's office and I told him about it. He had 2 excellent staffers, Lisa Heim and Dave McCandless. They helped me put together paperwork and all that. We filed an EEOC claim. Now, the EEOC took over 2 years to determine that that was a violation of my rights, my daughter's rights. Last year at the festival at St. Gabe's, I happened to run into Mr. Chabot, and I said, hey, it's been over 1.5 years now since this has been going on. 2 years. can you help me? So he sent me out to his office. We put together some more paperwork, and the EEOC called me within about 2 weeks and said, we're coming to a close on your case, and it looks favorable. So, I mean, the bureaucrats, the middle layer that's doing the work, I'm sure they could be doing things a little better, more efficiently if they had some help. But Mr. Chabot, leaning on him a little bit, I'm sure that made it go faster. So my issue was finally resolved May of this year. So he did help me, and I'm an independent. Again, I vote for the person.
Thank you. And I want to thank you, I want to thank my staff, Rosalind back there, and Joe over here, and Randy, because they're the ones that are really good.
I am Mr. Chabot's, he was my second grade teacher at St. Joseph. I'm going to very quickly to do some Monday morning quarterback. He was a quarterback in college, right?
I played college football, but not quarterback. I was a lineman.
Like quarterback. Anyway, my question to you is, you had a certain rosy outlook of government back in 1975, and now you've been in Congress for many, many years. How many years now? 23 years. How has Washington changed you, if at all? And what is going to be your legacy of having been in Washington for 23 years?
Good question, Regina. Regina was probably the best student I had, too, at St. Joseph School. She was a great, great, great student. And we had some good ones in that campus. I taught I had 27th graders approximately, and I think 10 8th graders, something like that. And they were great kids. I learned a lot more from them than I think they learned from me, to be honest. But as far as legacy, it's so hard to say. I mean, I've always just felt, you know, it's your responsibility to give your best for the people you represent. Try to take care of their problems. That's, you know, the most important thing. People disagree on, and it's a controversial topic, but you asked me someone to bring it up. You know, abortion is a thing that people, you know, are on both sides about it. And I introduced a ban on a particular type of late-term abortions, partial birth abortion. Fought it for 8 years, and went all the way to U.S. Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court upheld what the House passed my bill, the Senate passed it, and the President signed it, and I believe the U.S. Supreme Court, and it was upheld. So that's saves about 30,000 lives a year from that particular type. You know, actually, somebody who I signed this document when I first got elected called the Contract with America. I believed in those things. There was things like a balanced budget, even though we're not even close to that. I had probably the best lifetime score when it comes to voting against wasteful spending. And I've not given up. I'm the one that introduced the balanced budget amendment to this Congress. Do we have a chance of passing it? Probably not. But those 10 items in there was tax reform. We had 2 major tax reforms since I've been in there, and I've been one of the leaders on both of them. And just a whole range of things in there. So, I mean, I think my legacy is that I believed in the things that I said I would do. We haven't accomplished all of them, but I haven't given up either. I'm going to, you know, keep fighting until, you know, I'm having fight left in me. I'm sure not there yet. But
This gentleman,
thank you, Regina, for being such a great student and a great example for some of the other young folks through the years. Yes, sir.
My name's Tyler.
Make this the last question.
Last
Okay,
one.
My name's Tyler Shannon, and I know it's, like, I'm not old enough to retire yet. I know most of you guys are probably on some type of Social Security. We know it's a problem. My employer pays 6.25%. I pay 6.25%. Why do I want to keep on paying $125 of every $10,000 I make in the Social Security when I know it's going broke? Now, I realize that all these people paid into it and we gotta somehow take care of it. Now, is there any type of provision where I keep on paying it in, and I take maybe 10, 15%, get out of the program, and I use that 10, 15% of the Social Security that I'm paying into it to go to my retirement? Because my dad paid into retirement, or Social Security. He elected to take the late option to give it to my mom. And when he died 2 years after his election went in, she wasn't able to get it because she made too much. So why do I want to go into that system?
Yeah, it's a critical question and probably a good one to end on because it is so
Now,
important. Yeah, go ahead.
all you gotta do is say, give us options. If you want to stay in the system, pay it. If not, take your 10, 15%, pay to the seniors that we owe, because they're never gonna get that money back.
Yeah.
And this is both parties, because the minute you say, I'm gonna fix Social Security, your opponent's gonna say, look what he's doing, he's taking away grandma's Social Security. Give us the option to get out of it, all completely, because this guy shouldn't be in it.
Well,
He's gonna pay for it, but he shouldn't be in it.
well, you know, Social Security is really a sacred contract between the people of this nation and our government. Now, when it was started back during the New Deal,
It was under 1%.
Yeah, people didn't live as long, for one thing. We hadn't included a whole lot of other things, disability for people that abuse drugs or alcohol or other things. None of that was paid back in those days. Now there's all kinds of things being paid out of the fund. I was actually for, it didn't pass, but I was for something that would have allowed people to take a portion. You mentioned approximately 13% right now that comes out of everybody, half out of your paycheck, half out of your employer if it goes to Social Security. And we kind of think of it as being in a lockbox or waiting for us when we retire, but it's actually a paper IOU because of something that happened back in the 60s when LBJ was president. They took the general fund and they were trying to pay for the Vietnam War and pay for the Great Society programs at the same time. They had a lot of money in Social Security, and what they did is they combined the Social Security fund with the rest of the money in one big bunch. And that money has been paid out now for whatever Congress and our presidents want to spend it on. It's spent for our military, it's spent for food stamps, it's spent for our highways, it's spent for everything. That's the reason that I'm a co-sponsor of a bill called the Social Security Preservation Act.
Out.
Pardon me? I didn't get to that yet. I'm gonna get to that. I'm giving you a long-winded answer, unfortunately. But I'm in favor of something called the Social Security Preservation Act. It would say that every dollar that's taken out of your paycheck that goes to Social Security can only go to Social Security. Can't go to any of that other stuff, just for Social Security. That's what we ought to do. That would help us solve the problem. The other thing, as far as you're concerned, a lot of young people think that there's a better chance that they're going to see a UFO than actually get Social Security when they retire. That's just what they think. Now, there's a lot of people, as you mentioned, probably on Social Security want to make sure it's here. What we need to do is protect it for people that are on it right now. But I do think that there ought to be an option for people like yourself to take a portion of that, whether of the 6.5, 1%, 2% or something, and it goes in an account that you then would have the ability to have in, however you wanted to, within certain parameters, and you would have probably a greater rate of return. Then you would get Social Security, but it would be at a lower amount because you didn't put it all in there. Plus you have this other, I know you want to take it all out completely, and some people think that.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
set up my own account.
Your own thing, right, but what I'm saying is, most people,
Like a thrift savings,
yeah, pardon me?
the thrift savings plan.
Yeah, what I'm saying is a portion of it. This gentleman says we gotta go further than that and let people put it all in. My concern about that at this point, that one thing, there's just not.
I know
there's
I
no
gotta pay the tax, but let me take, let's say, of the 100% I pay, give me 20, 15%, put in my own account.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying I want to do. I was for that.
Yeah.
We never had the votes to pass it, okay? Some people were opposed to that. They said, well, that makes the system even more unfunded if we let you do that. My view, though, is that you would be taking less out later on because you paid less in.
If you give me the option up to 10, 15, 20%,
Yeah.
and let me roll it in the stock market in my own account.
Yeah. But we're letting you do
80%
both.
takes
We're letting
care
you
of the
do what
owner.
you said there,
Yeah.
and we're still giving you the Social Security, but we're saying it's just, it's lesser because you didn't put it all in.
Well-
But you're saying you're willing to sacrifice it all, I get that, but it was more generous to you. But the concern, a lot of folks were concerned that if we let anybody take any of it out, then it's gonna jeopardize the whole system. I don't think it would, because they would be receiving less out of Social Security and therefore put less of a burden on it. But again, neither thing happened, so, we're arguing about something that didn't happen. I'm sorry.
You can reintroduce that, introduce that?
Oh, yeah, you can reintroduce it, it's just a matter of getting the votes, Now, and when you have the votes, you need a majority in the House. Over in the Senate, where there's 100, a lot of people think you only need 51. You actually need 60 because of the rule they have over there where they can filibuster and talk something to death. You might think I'm filibustering up here, but I'm really not. But once they can talk it to death and you never actually get it up for a vote unless you get 60 out
Or
of
they
100.
don't even put it on the floor too.
What's that?
Or they don't even put it on.
Or they don't even bring it up, right, depending on which party's in control and whether they like it or they don't. But anyway, I unfortunately have to run up to another town hall meeting up in Warren County. But this has really been a very good discussion. I think we're never going to agree on everything, but I really learned a lot here. I definitely learned a lot here. It was great to hear one of my former students here, Regina. And Mr. Mayor, Mr. Manager, thank you for opening up your great facility. I don't know if you wanted to wrap it up, Mr. Mayor?
Let's all give a nice round of applause to the Congressman, and thank him for coming to us. And on behalf of the City of Forest Park, I want to thank you all for coming and participating in this as well. And hopefully in the future we can have another of these, and you can come and bring your neighbors. Thank you all and have a good evening.